You're welcome to get up and graze as often as you need to, or as often as there's food available. I'm Cheryl Steindorf. I'm the chair of the Democratic Party of Gulf County. I'm also woke. All right. Let's hear it for all the woke people here today. I'm proud to be woke. We're going to start off tonight's event with the flag salute. So if you all stand, please.
In this conflict that we have going on right now. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, welcome here tonight. We're so happy to be the host of our three wonderful Democratic candidates for U.S. Representative, 2nd District, correct?
Yes.
All right, get the verbiage right, Cheryl. All right, so I'm just going to start by introducing our elected officers of Gulf County Dems and our precinct captains who are here today. And Ron is here with me, he's the vice chair. Jackie Nickel is our treasurer and secretary. She's off on a hiatus. Crystal, our state rep, is here. Crystal, will you stand? Or not? She's not in here? Okay. You might have met her at the welcome desk, and she's been running around over here by the food. Our precinct captains, Mary Kelly. Can you stand, Mary? Yes. Pam Stewart. Stand, Pam. Our honorary member, Z.B. Schmidt. Kendra Jacoby. All right, and Charlene Thomas. She's back there. So, you know, when it comes to any event, and, you know, most of ours are small, except our protests, which are big. The last one we had was around 100 people. So thank you all who participated and have participated. Oh, Vanessa Fennell is here. She's our other precinct captain. Yay, Vanessa. Who did? Crystal. We introduced you. That's Crystal, our state rep. All right, so I just want to thank everybody for pulling this together. And I think that this is a rarity for all of the Dem Party candidates in the primary to get together in the same place. And so I think it's going to really help us. I just want to thank them for running, for putting themselves out there. And it's just such hard work. And we just thank you. Thank you, all three. I wish you were spread out over the state of Florida so we could put each one of you in office, because you're so extraordinary, and we support you all. And so thank you for coming and helping. I just wanted to say one thing about being a Democrat. And Representative Tellerico from Texas was asked about why he's a Democrat. And he said, I was raised by a single mother, a mother who depended on a lot of assistance over the years. And when I found out she was a Democrat, I said, Mom, why are you a Democrat? And she said, because Democrats are for the people. All right, so if we just focus on that every time we're talking about an issue, and we know where we are authentically in our own selves, and we speak the truth to people, we'll get elected. All right, and we'll be leaders. And so remember why you're a Democrat. I know all of you practically, and I know why you're Democrats, and you fit the mold. And so I appreciate each and every one of you who came out tonight, who are learning a little bit more about our party. I want to shout out to Addie, our younger generation that we're bringing into the fold. And Addie has gotten her feet wet by volunteering to go out and canvass with me. So nobody knows what it's like to canvass unless you've been out there. And I want to shout out to Pam Stewart, because she's been going to Tallahassee every Saturday for years now, canvassing. and getting people registered to vote and talking to people. And we, as you guys all know, building those relationships with people is really what gets them to turn out and vote. So thank you, Addie, for being my pal, my canvassing pal. And we haven't been bitten by any dogs yet, and or sprayed with any pepper spray or anything, threatened in any way. So we're all good. And there are some Democratic candidates that have been run for office in the past, and Pastor Davis is here with us today, and Tan Smiley is here. He's our precinct chair, and he's going to be running soon. And so blessings to you guys, and thanks for coming and inspiring us all to be part of what makes America great. Thank you. So Ron, you want to introduce our candidates?
To lead off our candidate forum is a returning candidate, Miss Yen Bailey from Fantastic.
Bailey, and I'm running for Congress because we need hope and change. Some of you probably know that I ran in 2024 when everyone thought the race was hopeless. But I ran then because I really wanted the people of this district to know that someone was willing to stand up for them, even when it was impossible. And I'm running again now because that's exactly the kind of leader I wish we had in Congress right now. We do not need any more politicians who are only going to step up when things are easy or when they see an opportunity. We don't need more leaders who have to wait for polling or permission from their deep pocket donors before they speak out. Or leaders who, we definitely don't need leaders who are just going to throw up their hands and say, there's nothing we can do because we don't have enough votes. We need a fighter. We need leaders who are not going to quit when things get hard, who aren't going to just stay quiet when something is wrong, and who, when someone slams a door in your face, finds another way in. I have been out talking to people all over this district for the last year and a half, and people are struggling just to afford their groceries and healthcare and housing and insurance. Young people are wondering if they'll ever be able to afford a house. Seniors more and more are trying to stretch a fixed income more every year. And so many people have just lost faith that this government is working for them at all. All they see is chaos and corruption and political games. And that's why accountability is at the center of my campaign. We are never going to be able to fix our problems until we get a government that works for people and not just for the wealthy donors and the corporate interests. It starts with overturning Citizens United, term limits, banning stock trading in Congress, enacting a moratorium on lobbying once a congressperson leaves office, so they're not just going to turn around and cash in, enacting a code of ethics for the Supreme Court. And when I get to Congress, I am going to show up, answer phone calls, hold town halls, make sure the people of this district get the resources that they need. There's no point in going to Washington and voting for things that never make it back to North Florida. I know that a lot of people say that, I've heard a lot of people say, that in order to win this district, we have to have a moderate or a blue dog or a more conservative Democrat, that we need to water down our message and sound a little more Republican. But that strategy is not working. If people wanted a watered down Republican, there are 9 in this race. People just want honesty and authenticity, and someone's going to fight for them. And I have learned that the more I tune out the political insiders and just try to stay true to who I am, this movement has been growing. I am no stranger to fighting when there are long odds. I'm the daughter of Vietnamese refugees who came to this country and risked everything to get here. My dad was a pilot in the South Vietnamese Air Force. When Saigon fell, he packed a plane with as many people as he could, and they flew off, not knowing where they were going to land. My mom escaped on a fishing boat as bombs exploded around them. And when they got here, life was not easy. But they believed in the promise of America that if you work hard, you can build a better life for your kids. And it was because of that promise that I was able to go to law school and spend my career serving this community. I fought for abused and neglected kids through the Guardian Ad Litem program, spent 14 years as an ethics lawyer, making sure other lawyers followed the rules, started a nonprofit to reach rural and working class voters that political insiders were ignoring. And I never thought I'd run for Congress, but 3 months before the election in 2024, I was asked to run because no one else was willing to do it, and Neil Dunn was just going to go unopposed. And even though I knew it was going to be hard, I grew up believing in stories about ordinary people called to do impossible things. And I said yes. And with just 3 months, tiny budget, incredible volunteers, we were able to outperform candidates who'd raised over 30 times as much as we had. And now we're back, and we have the best chance we've had to win in a long time. I think we can win this if we all work together. So I hope you will join me. Thank you so much for having me here.
Docket is Nick. Did the mic work? Wouldn't do.
Yeah. Thank y'all. I've been coming out here as a candidate for a little over a year. Way to go, Port St. Joe. I mean, look at this room. This is packed out. Thank y'all. This is great. It's what we need. When people say we need to do something different, this is the different, right? It's coming out to things, it's talking to your friends, it's getting involved, it's learning about what's actually going on in politics and who's running and who you want to support. That's why being a Democrat is a good thing right now. Don't be scared of it, right? They're running away from what's going on. And what we're dealing with right now isn't just a policy dispute, right? It's a change of where our constitutional system goes and where power lives. Do we still have power as people who live here to elect members of Congress to represent us? And it's no more important than what's happening right now in Iran, right? They are doing that just with executive power. They're not asking Congress, and Congress isn't asking to be asked. Well, that's a huge problem, right? And so we need people in Congress who aren't going to slink away from the hard decisions and only show up when it's an easy vote that they can pass politically. I don't understand how all of them aren't disgraced by not coming in and standing up and saying what they need to say about this stuff. So I'm Nick Zateslow. I grew up in Tallahassee. I went to Rickards High School there, played in the drum line, and I was in the IB program. It was a fun time growing up in the 90s and early 2000s around here. My mom's family's all from Panama City, so I ended up doing the circuit back and forth here a lot. Staying in the summers at St. George and Apalachicola and out here and down in Mexico Beach, we'd always kind of pick a town. And so it always feels good coming back here and watching this area grow and really kind of boom into what it's become here of real, infrastructure needs, real housing needs. People oftentimes say, oh, well, these smaller towns don't have the big problems that Tallahassee or Panama City might have. Well, I tell you, after being here for a year and talking with a lot of you individually, that's not true, right? You have different needs. But you have a lot of the same needs that everybody else does, which is making sure you can afford the place that you can live where you want to live, not just can you find an apartment, but is it a good apartment? Is it a good house that you can buy? The jobs, where are they? What kind of job is it? What kind of hours do you get? Do you get healthcare with it? Like, these are all things besides, is a job available? Is it a good job that matters, that actually makes you able to live your life the way you want to live it? And I spent a lot of time in my career after high school traveling around the state of Florida and the country a little bit, and trying to make government better. I worked in the legislative process and lobbying and policy and working on the things like voting rights. We got the DMV voter motor law passed through. We got things like the vote by mail laws passed where you can just have your vote by mail ballot. We did a lot of good government stuff, and we worked with Republicans to do that. Now they're stripping a lot of that back because it worked. And in their mind, they thought it would only help them. And they didn't realize other people might use those same laws to help them. But so we got to get back to good government. And I'm standing before you right now saying I will vote and support any bill, any law, any politician who wants to do things that support and help our people. I don't care if it's a Republican county commissioner. I don't care if it's a Republican state House or Senate member or a Democratic congressional or Senate member. We need people who care about the policy, and the reason for that is to support people and help people, not to get along politically. And we have to get back to that. If we don't, we're never going to get out of this mess that we're in, because we have to start working together. And in my career after that, I spent some time working in technology companies and working on building better voter files and making sure, again, that the base data that we use and the software that we use to even run campaigns works properly. So some of that was making sure that we had good systems for communication with digital and text messaging. Some of that was making sure that we just had good, improved data for all candidates to know just where somebody lives and what party they are and all of that. Not to help one party or another. I worked for both. I've worked for nonpartisan organizations doing this, but because I want people to be able to make a decision about who's best to represent them. And I want those candidates to compete on an even playing field and not just say that, oh, well, you had better tools, so you get to communicate with people and win, and the other person doesn't. And that's always been sort of my strategy on how I looked at this. And the last 3 years of that career, before I made the decision about a year ago to jump into this congressional race, is I was a COO with an AI research lab. And it was a weird transition for me, but I really started watching and getting a bit worried about what's coming with AI. And this was, about 3 years ago. And what I learned in there is the severe power of that tool in general, right? It's stuff that you can use for your emails and making them better. Now you can make pictures and images and videos with it. And back then people were kind of worried about it at a theoretical level. Like, what is this gonna be? Well, that technology has increased leaps and bounds faster than even the best researchers in San Francisco thought it would. And we're all having to deal with the outcomes of that now. And I'm really worried that we're about to automate ourselves into poverty, that we don't have an idea of how to deal with fake images, fake video, fake pictures, fake text, all customized to you and you and you and you in real time. We need people in Congress who understand the next threat that's coming and how to make the next set of the economy better, how to bring the workers with us, so that you don't get left behind and your healthcare and your jobs and your economy locally and regionally and as a country don't just fail, but everything is more efficient, right? And we have better stuff that comes on the fly through your app and you can order things. We need to make sure that those people are taken care of. And the other side of that is these data centers. How many of you heard of data center? Everybody here is talking about data centers. It's like the new word for the year. Well, let me tell you about what those are. And they're coming here. That's the thing. The data centers are going to be in the rural areas. Tallahassee's not going to get a data center. Right? This area is, Gadsden County is, Madison, Monroe County, they're going to get data centers because they need land and they need electricity and they need water. And we've got a lot of all of those things right now. These are mega facilities. You're talking about 800,000 square foot buildings, 800,000 square feet, and there's 6 to 8 of them on a complex. And they're putting multiple of these in different counties all around the country and in Florida right now. And we're the next build. I'm talking to realtors right now who are telling me that they're talking with Saudi princes on the phone. They're buying cash land. So besides getting into the campaign, let me know what you're hearing about that, because you're on the ground here, and if you're hearing stuff, we're trying to track a lot of it and figure out what is really happening and where it's going on. But we know they're buying land here. We know they're coming, and these facilities are regionally changing, right? That if you have that level of this facility, as big as the Pentagon, stamped down out here, it's going to change your whole environment and the reason that you like living here. I don't think it'll destroy places, and I'm not saying to ban the data centers. But what I want to make sure is the contracts are good. I want to make sure that if you get a data center here, you have the best schools, the best roads, the best parks, that your area is rejuvenated by having that data center there and the taxation out of that, and making sure that we, again, don't leave the people behind, that our land and our people are protected as we go into the new modern AI economy, which is coming whether we want it or not. We didn't get to make that decision, but we can make the decision about how we live in it. And the last thing I'll leave you on is basically how we're doing that. So I agree. I think this district is winnable. I think the more you see in the special elections, the more you see in the fundraising we're all doing, the more you see in the amount of outreach, and all of you being here on your own is the proof point, right? People are energized and they want something different. And the 8 or 9 Republicans that are in this seat right now, they're running one campaign for one constituent, and he does not live in this district. They just need Donald Trump's endorsement. That's it. That's the game. That's how you win that district. They're kissing the ring, they're bending the knee, and they're pledging their obedience to Donald Trump and to the Republican Party. And I'm really proud of the fact that we have a Democratic primary that's talking about ideas and solutions and people and what matters to each other. And so I hope we can all stick in that, and I think we can. I'm really enjoying meeting the other candidates more. I'm enjoying meeting all of you more, talking about the solutions that we need. So come join us. We're doing meet and greets all across the district. We've done about 60 of them in living rooms and in businesses and people's properties, wherever they are. You bring some people, we'll bring some pizza, some beer, some snacks. Let's talk. Let's hang out, and we're doing those all over the place. We've had over 2,000 people in living rooms so far. And I'm really proud of that fact that we're building a real organization to win and flip this seat in the general every day. That's what I care about, is how do we get better representation for our people to protect us all from what's coming. So thank y'all. I'm Nick Zateslow. Go check out teamzforflorida.com, and I'm glad to answer any questions y'all got. Thank y'all.
Thank you all for being here tonight. It is an incredible honor to see such a full room. I have to tell y'all, we travel all over North Florida to 16 counties in this district, all the way from Walton over to Lafayette. And this is one of the fullest rooms for a DEC that I've seen in a while. So you guys are incredible. For those who haven't met me before, I'm Amanda Marie Green. For those who think you might have seen me before and I look a little different, I was the pregnant candidate last year. I gave birth to my son in January. He's 3 months old and he's home with my in-laws who have moved in with us to make sure that our support network is strong while we do this very important thing of flipping this district. I come from a military family. I come from a family dedicated to service. And so my whole life I've known that I would serve this country, and I didn't always know how. And I went to Florida State. I studied international affairs, emergency management, economics, and public administration. And I was recruited by USAID's top partner. Does anyone here know what USAID is or was? Was. Yep. All right, so for those who don't know, the U.S. Agency for International Development was responsible for delivering life-saving food and medicine to the world's most vulnerable communities, right? We talk about hunger in this district, we're talking about famine overseas. And so I had the honor of, for the past 10 years, serving as an operations director for their top partner and working on things like the Famine Early Warning Signs Network. I designed the budget that would allow us to monitor famine in the 42 most vulnerable countries around the world. I've helped get HIV, AIDS, and anti-malarials to remote corners and pockets of communities. And I would still be doing that today if the Trump administration hadn't decided to dismantle what was arguably our best tool for building allyship and ensuring that folks liked Americans overseas. Last year when the Trump administration decided to do that, they...
Sorry,
Yes, buddy.
Arguably out of that statement.
Yeah, arguably, thank you. It was the best way to build allyship overseas. I appreciate you, sir. I tried very hard when I heard this lie that there was fraud, waste, and abuse at USAID. As someone who was an operations director, I was responsible for compliance, for HR, for finance oftentimes, and I was a firefighter for a lot of these programs where I would go in when there was an issue, identify it, and leave. And oftentimes I was working with the Office of Inspector General. Who was the first person that they fired when they went into USAID? They fired the Office of Inspector General because that's who's actually identifying fraud, waste, and abuse. So I tried to call our congressman and tell him that this was a dangerous lie. And this wasn't just dangerous for all the folks that we serve all around the globe. This was dangerous for Americans. This would hurt Florida farmers whose produce we use to intervene in famine, right? This would hurt Americans traveling overseas and folks who are interacting with new immigrants in this country. USAID was ensuring that there was a positive image of the American people. And to allege that there was fraud, waste, and abuse without any evidence was dangerous. I couldn't get a hold of him. I don't know how many of y'all have tried to contact Neil Dunn, and he's had a really good excuse for the last year, but for the last 10 years, what I've found across this district, as we've interviewed folks, is that people have a really hard time getting in touch with their congressman. We've had no constituent services since Gwen Graham and Alan Boyd and Al Lawson. And that is unacceptable. And so when I realized we were experiencing taxation without representation, I realized I was at a crossroads. About 83% of my network was laid off. I was offered a job with the Australians to do the same work that I was doing before, because just because the U.S. decides not to be good to the world doesn't mean other countries don't understand the investment. And so I realized I could help the Australians do this work, or I could take a look at our own communities where we're hearing about the same problems: hunger, lack of access to affordable health care, slow response post-disaster, post-hurricane. And I could look at the community where I'd be raising my son, and I could make sure that the next generation has more opportunity and they have someone in Congress that they trust. And so we started laying the groundwork, right? Building out a team. I'm an operations director. I know how to build a strong team. So I got the only campaign manager who has won a statewide election with a Democrat in the last decade, was my first hire. And then we started not paying for expensive polls. A lot of us, you can't afford that yet. But interviewing folks, right? Interviewing Democrats, interviewing non-party affiliates, interviewing Republicans, and finding out what is frustrating folks. And we've realized it's the same thing that Donald Trump ran on and failed on almost immediately. It's affordability, right? We can't afford this life. And we hear that across the spectrum. Now, some of us are also concerned about the Constitution and national security. So we have to worry about that too. But as far as what we're campaigning on and what we're promising to folks, I can't promise you that I will pull us out of Iran. I can't make that promise. I can promise you how I'll vote on it. I can promise you that as someone who has worked in the Middle East and North Africa, I will use the position as a representative to ensure that my colleagues understand that going to war with Iran is not productive and that we need to have a swift exit at this point and that the gas economy has changed forever. But what I can promise to this district is how we flip it, right? What I can promise to this district is that I have spent my career unlocking federal dollars for the world's most vulnerable. And I am proud to say that I am going to pivot to focusing on North Florida's most vulnerable, right? I've interviewed a few superintendents and I've asked them, do you want me to save the Department of Education? No, no. I want you to save Head Start. I want you to save the USDA. I talked to our farmers. They're upset about USAID, right? Our farmers feel left behind, and they feel like Democrats and Republicans fail them time and time again in Florida. Things like NAFTA, we talk about tariffs as kind of a bad tool. Tariffs aren't a bad tool. They're a tool, right? The problem is when you use a tool like a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And North Florida farmers, the reality is they've been left behind quite a bit and forgotten. Trade agreements like NAFTA prioritize Mexico. That's not actually good for Florida because we're in the same ag zone. So when I go around the district, I don't ask someone if they're a Democrat or Republican first when I ask them what they need. I just ask them what they need. And it is startling to me how many folks have the same concerns. On the constitutional front, I was just telling this table over here earlier, folks are not necessarily condemning Donald Trump, which is a hard truth for us to reckon with, that there might be people who would still vote for him. We have to win this district anyway. What I'm hearing at the same time is that they think he's gotten a little bit out of control, right? So the conversation that I then get to have is a productive one, which is, well, what would it look like if he was in control? It would look more like his last administration. And at this point, I'd be grateful for that too. Yeah. And so I tried to make sure that we have a grounding conversation. I come from a military family. I come from a family of service. My family hunts and fishes. I want to see the woods and the public lands look the same way for my son when his grandfathers are taking him out as the way it did when I was a kid, right? This is common ground we have, and it can go beyond party line. I was just endorsed by Congressman Alan Boyd. I'm incredibly proud of that endorsement. For the next generation to take control, we need mentorship. But we also need younger people to stand up and be willing to take the baton. And so that's what I'm doing before you. I'm willing to take the baton. I want to hear what your problems are. I want to hear what your solutions are. One of the most inspiring things for me about this district is that this district wasn't waiting for me to show up or for Nick to show up or for Yen to show up. Folks in this district are doing things themselves. So just imagine what we could do if we had a representative who was actually interested in unlocking the federal taxpayer dollars that we paid into, bringing them back home. And so with that, I'm here. I'd love to answer your questions. I give my cell phone to everybody. One day I might regret giving it out to like 800,000 people. But in the meantime, call me, tell me what you're concerned about. We're looking for folks to start supporting in each of the counties. For the last 8 months, I jumped in August. We've been mostly receiving information and interviewing as many people as possible to make sure that the platform that we're running is not just going to win the primary, but will also win the general, because that's the goal, right? And we are now at a point where we are trying to push message out, and so we're fundraising to make sure that we can communicate not just with all of the superstars that are willing to come to a DEC meeting, but the folks who are at home who feel like they haven't had a Democrat on the ticket that will fight for them. We want to make sure that they've got mailers in their mailbox. We want to make sure that they're seeing seeing our ads on Facebook. And so right now we're pivoting to pushing message out. But we're still here. We love your feedback. We appreciate you being here tonight. I'm Anna Marie Green, and I hope I can serve you soon. Thanks, y'all.
They've seen on social media for 10 years and, you know, baked in. But we can start to ask people to change their public behavior on it, right? You can't disrespect somebody in a room when we're working here and we're trying to get something done, right? That's not okay. You can't come in and try and attack people. And the other side is that you certainly can't even tacitly support laws that objectively hurt a certain group of people, right? As soon as you start passing laws of a group that's targeting one group of people that hurts them or brings them down, we all know where that goes, right? We have seen it. We live here. Like, this is not a surprise to people that they'll go worse than you thought and go worse than you thought and take it down another couple of notches, and now it's something unrecognizable from maybe the okay thing they talked about at the beginning. So I look at it very strongly as you can't give an inch on those things in the real version of the passing of the law. Now, sometimes you can't stop everything, right? Because we live in Florida too. We understand that. When I used to work in policy, we used to have an idea of, you know, if they trying to cut off your arms and your legs, at least don't let them cut off your legs, right? Like, stop it so you can fight another fight. And so I'm very practical on it as far as the voting and the legislation around those issues. But on the defense of people side, I don't let it go. I think it's wrong, and I think it needs to be called out respectfully, but called out and said, hey, that's not okay to say here or to try and to do that stuff here. And I don't just say that in theory. Last night, or my days are all crazy now, but 3 or 4 days ago, we were in Panama City doing a meet and greet. And the meet and greet was with one of the people who's the leader at the LGBT Center. But she also just invited her neighbors. So we had a bunch of Trump folks, a bunch of Democratic primary voters, and a bunch of trans folks all hanging out together in a living room. About 40 people for 2 hours, and there was alcohol. So it was crazy. And I'll tell you at the end of it though, everybody said this was the first productive discussion they've had together in ever. They couldn't remember just getting together, talking, and not hating each other. And we had to do a little bit of push and pull, and hey, let's not say that about that, or let's change how we talked about that. But it's because we were talking about solutions. And I didn't let people get caught up in the past and saying who should blame, how do we fight this thing, or let's discuss the history of the last 15 years and who was more wrong or who was more right. I'm saying let's stop that right now, and that's part of that is to say let's look at what's actually happening right now. Not about what you thought about something 5 years ago or what somebody told you on an internet post. What's happening now? And look at your neighbor next to you. Is that person a threat to you? No? Then let's keep moving forward together because we all have to live here together. So that's just kind of how I think about the whole thing. Thank you.
So I actually did also grow up on the Redneck Riviera. I grew up in Destin, and so I was always surrounded by lots of very conservative people. I was a Republican, actually, for a very long time. Although once I got to college, it was the first time that I had ever met someone. I'm sure I'd met gay people before. I just didn't realize or didn't know. And it was the first time that I actually met someone who was gay. We became really great friends. And from there, I mean, that was the start of, I guess, my move left. And I believe that when people are exposed to, I mean, a lot of the problem is that a lot of people are not ever exposed to, they probably never met actually a trans person or a Muslim person. And when you spend more time with people and you realize they're just normal people, they just come from someplace else, or they just live their life a little differently than I do. And as a government, we need to make sure that we support all groups and that we provide, that we normalize everything. You know, we don't single different people out. We provide people with platforms, if different groups platforms, if they want it. Sometimes certain groups may not feel safe, and we need to make sure that all of these different groups feel safe enough to be able to interact with people who are not part of their own community. I think it's just making sure that there are those opportunities for people to interact and intersect. That's how we change the world. Yeah. Okay, this thing.
Thanks, Jan. So on the point of solutions, so I'm blessed to have folks in my life that are happy to advise me on these topics. I think nothing for us without us. And so when we talk about trans folks, or we talk about folks who practice Islam, I ask the folks in my life who are in one of those groups what they'd want to see out of a representative. One of the things I think that surprised me, anyway, when I was asking my cousin and a close friend, what do you want when Democrats are talking about trans folks, you know, on the news? They were like, for the love of God, could you stop? It's dangerous. And it calls a lot of attention to us that we're not necessarily asking for. And a lot of what I see on the news is an attempt to bait Democrats into talking about disadvantaged folks and to put us on the defensive, to put us on the back. The assumption needs to be that we are all welcome here and we all are equal, right? And so when you're asked questions that are specifically to get a good soundbite and to cause people to get upset, I think it's important that Democrats have some solid media training and go on the aggressive and say, you're asking me this question on a night when gas prices are X. You're asking me this question on the day after we've invaded Iran, right? It's a distraction tactic to keep us from talking about real issues and to turn people into scapegoats. And I think Democrats need to, yes, we should be defensive of people who are under attack, but we should be attacking the issues more aggressively. I think that that's something that we need to do. Another thing that I see that is actually within the control of Congress and we need to do very quickly is with the rise of social media and the number of bots on social media, a lot of folks fall into extremist views, not because their neighbor brought them into it, but because they thought a bunch of people online shared the same belief. And those people were not real, right? Those are Russian bots. Those are Iranian bots. I'm not advocating that we censor or limit your First Amendment rights of people, but we absolutely should be regulating bots online. Social media companies are well aware of who is a real person and who is not, and they do not need your ID to determine that. I know I've heard that from enough tech experts at this point to know. And so holding social media firms accountable for allowing hate speech, and not just allowing hate speech, encouraging hate speech to further divide our communities is something that Congress needs to take action on very quickly. It's a great question. Thank you, sir.
Oh, yes, sorry.
We're gonna take 15 minutes for candidate questions.
Thank you, sir.
So just let me know who you want to speak. Anybody got any questions? No. Ma'am?
If you win, let's just say hypothetically you win, and you go into Congress, who's going to be your mentors?
Who are you asking?
Who in the senior?
Oh, sorry, I meant
Which
Oh,
candidate
this is
would
for
you,
all of us.
Okay.
Oh.
who wants to go
When you
first?
go in and you're a new congressperson, it's my understanding you generally have somebody who's senior, a congressperson who mentors you. So I'm just curious who you would use as your mentor.
Who wants it first?
Have you
Amanda?
I'm happy to go.
thought of
Yeah.
that?
It's a great question, and it might get me a little bit of a bad response from some of our Republican folks, but I think Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has done a phenomenal job growing into the role. When she first came in, she came in pretty rough and tumble, incredibly progressive, and she made a lot of enemies in the Republican and the Democratic Party. If you've watched her journey and her maturity, over the last couple years, she's proposed, I want to say, more bipartisan bills that have moved out of the House than any other rep with her years of experience that's a a socialist Democrat. So her progress is incredible. And I think, I'm currently mentored by Congressman Alan Boyd, and a lot of that is process. How do you get farmers on board with environmentalists? How do you get lobbyists on board with lawyers? And how do you build coalition? Because you need a majority to move forward. And I think Alexandria has done an incredible job learning how to build coalition. And she started, she started by giving herself a harder, like a disadvantage almost, and she's made incredible lemonade out of lemons. And so I'm sure everyone asks for her, but I would be pushing that we'd get her mentorship. One of the other things for folks to bear in mind, when a Democrat takes this seat, party leadership, it's likely going to be one of the slimmest margins that we see in the race, right? It's a +8 Republican district, which means it's incredibly slim, and we're looking at +6 and +8 movement, right? So if we take this district, the idea is that the House leadership is going to want to keep this district happy, which means we have a few more cards to play with than most folks who come to Congress, right? And so we can be making things like big committee asks, and we can be making things like big mentorship asks. So my hope is we'd get prioritized. It's a great question.
Yeah, I don't want to get into like specific people in Congress because as soon as you do that, Eric Swalwell happens and then you look awful, right? So I like, though, I think people like, Pete Buttigieg, I like folks who are trying to communicate differently, talk about things in a serious way. And I think there's a lot of people in the party, both in the elected official and in the kind of, just advisory structure of experts that we need. I really look at it, though, just to answer the kind of the internal Democratic Party, like how are you fighting within the Democratic Party, which I think is a really important question of what kind of vision do you have. And one thing is, I think that we need to make some major changes in how we do that mentorship process in the party. Right now, if you're senior leadership, if you've been in Congress for a long time, you get the party chair, right, or the committee chair or the vice chair position. We need to make that be voted on by the people in that committee based on who's the best person to lead that committee right now, and not based on who's just been in there for 35 years. I think that's a huge problem that the Republicans don't do, by the way. That's a Democratic Party thing. The Republicans elect who they want when they want in their committees. We don't. We just have a seniority system. So just to answer, I think there's a lot of great people all throughout that whole system. I don't think they're all bad and awful, but I would just say that I think that the folks who can communicate really well are the ones that I would want to learn from, because the process is going to be the process as it goes, right? That's something that you're going to have to navigate every time, but it's how do you actually talk to people about that, and how do you make sure that you're bringing along your colleagues and doing that? And I'd find anybody that will work with other people and not just scream at each other. That's my big thing there. So thank you. Good question, though.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna kind of stole my, not stole. Yeah, I mean, Alexandria Ocasio, I say her name correctly. Yeah, so AOC has always, she definitely is one of my favorites in Congress. I don't believe that she always is, I don't always agree with all of her policy positions, but she's not afraid to push back. But she's also really good at getting people to join her and get on board with her. I think she's a great communicator in that way. So yeah, I mean, I think anyone in Congress who's not afraid to step out of line sometimes, we have too many people who are always, who will always toe the party line. And, there've actually been a few times when I feel like AOC maybe should have pushed back a little bit harder on certain issues. But yes, just someone, I want to be mentored by someone who will help me just figure out how to navigate Congress. We'll still get things done, but not always have to just fall in line, because I think that's where this party has really, I think that's something that's really has been lacking lately. actually really on both sides, you know, where things are happening that everyone believes needs to be changed and people are not doing anything about it.
Hi, welcome to Gulf County, the Redneck Riviera. And my name is John Nagy, and I'm a resident of Howard Creek, which is up the road and to the right, about 18 miles. And my question to all of you, the Republican Party in the recent maybe 10-year period has demonized certain groups of people. Right now, transgendered people and Muslims are their target people. And of course, they stir fear and concern with citizens that are less informed, let's say. And I'd like to know from each of you, how would you go about combating and that kind of demonization and changing the tide so that we get back to a center normal where everyone is welcome and everybody is accepted in our society? Because this is something that I see that's really an infectious disease here. I mean, every time I go on Facebook nowadays and I see a post from a Republican operative, they're targeting Muslims and they're targeting transgenders. They're leaving, lesbians and gays alone for a little while, but you could show that that's going to come around too. And I guess it maybe stems from the theory of Christian nationalism that is taking over the country. So what are your thoughts on that?
I've heard all of the focus that each person has, where your focus is, but I'd like to know what committees you'd like to get yourself on should you get elected.
What she asked was, if and when you get elected, what committees would you like to serve on or would prefer to serve on? Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Could everybody hear that? Yeah.
I'll be quick with this one. There's a few committees that we're eyeing. One is the Ag Committee. Florida farmers haven't had a Democratic resource on the Ag Committee in quite a while, and North Florida farmers are desperate for it. We are confident that that's an easy commitment that we can make to folks because it's an easy assignment for a freshman representative, and we won't have to use too many cards to do it. That will allow us to bring a lot of money back to one of the leading industries in the district. And so you get 2 committee assignments typically. So that's the one that we're assuming is going to be a gimme. The other one is a toss-up. My top priority is appropriations. And before you think that that's crazy, appropriations, they decide where the money goes. Democratic leadership, no matter whether or not this district flips, there's a blue wave that will make sure we take back the House. And so Democrats will be deciding what important assignments are, and they'll be trying to appease this district. And so we'll be using every card we can to try to get on approps to make sure that we can bring as much money back to the district as possible. If I don't get my way on that, then we'll be looking at international relations simply because of my background and with the ongoing war in Iran. I would like to, it wouldn't just serve North Florida, but it would serve the American people, I think, to have a Middle East and North Africa expert from the Democratic side sitting on the International Relations Committee right now, unfortunately, which a month ago I wasn't eyeing at all. I was planning on focused on food and healthcare, but unfortunately we're in a different spot right now.
Yeah, I'll keep this one pretty brief as well. I'm going to probably hire an expert to figure out exactly which committees match exactly what we do, because honestly, I haven't spent too much time up on the Hill worrying about exactly which committees. But on a structural point, the Agricultural Committee, 100%, we're going to need somebody in this area who knows something about farming and land and what's going on. Infrastructure around the data centers that are being built out is going to be super important. It's kind of a boring one, but it's one that we really need to make sure we're concentrating on as they build these massive infrastructure projects of roads and electricity. You heard President Trump say in the State of the Union that we don't want our electric prices going up because of the data centers. That's exactly what those committees figure out and help do. So I'd concentrate there. And the other interesting one is basically finance and banking. If y'all are watching the crypto scam that's going on right now, the Trump administration and family is making billions of dollars off this stuff, and it's corrupting the entire world market of how basically international relations is done, because you have this off-market place where you can trade money. I don't want to get rid of crypto, but I do think that, again, trying to look at our people and saving our jobs and our economy, these are all things that are foundational to that if nobody's paying attention to it. So that's where I'd look.
So I would probably choose the ethics or the oversight committees. I spent most of my career as an ethics lawyer. I did legal ethics, so this would be a little different, but like I said earlier, I believe that until we get a government that functions properly, that works for people, we're not going to be able to solve a lot of the other issues. So making sure that the people who are in Congress are following the rules as part of the ethics committee, or making sure that all of our agencies are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And that, I feel like those are just top priorities. And so those would obviously be my choices. As a freshman in Congress, I'll probably be sent wherever they want me to go.
But why do only 2 of the candidates have petitions to get on the ballot in District 6? Amanda, we don't seem to have a petition for you. Oh.
We do, don't you worry.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you. Never mind. And also explain what's going on with this to everybody and why we're doing the petition thing. Like, why aren't you on the ballot?
I just gave her that answer, and it's nonpartisan. It's like, this just helps all of us get on the ballot. That's it. I've signed them for again and Amanda, they'll sign, like, this has nothing to do with your pledge to vote. It's nothing else. It saves us all 10 grand and helps us get on the ballot. Please do it for all the candidates. Just sign them and get them in. If you're a voter in Florida, that's all you need to do.
We didn't get any of that.
And not enough to speak, but so Justice Sotomayor said several years back, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, she was doing an interview, and I think it was on NPR, and she was asked the question what she thought the problem was in Congress. And she said that they don't sit in sessions. They sit in their offices and they monitor it. And it's a problem because it's just like we all experience it. We get on Facebook, we say something, and we don't have the people that it's directed to in front of us. So it's easy to say things and nothing gets accomplished. So how are you as potential congresspeople going to confront, what's the word? I can't think. What are you going to do about that so that actually things can be done? Because unfortunately, this is one of the worst Congresses that we've ever had. Nothing, what has been accomplished so far this year? I don't know. Nothing, as far as I know.
Sorry.
Hi. You were talking about the internet, and I have a question. The Republicans in Florida have made a point of introducing, over the last several years, restrictions on social media, particularly for children. And my question is, without going into the intricacies of the legislation, what's your attitude toward greater regulation of social media? What's your perspective on that?
We'll just answer both of those.
Yeah, we'll answer both. We'll repeat the question.
Who wants first?
So the first question was, and Marcia, correct me if you think this is not quite what you were saying, but it's how will you build coalition to actually move the needle forward for the American people? Yep. Yeah, and then the second question was general thoughts on social media regulation, particularly for minors. So what's the plan for the first question? I mean, it's all about building coalition. What is your capacity to build coalition within the Democratic Party and build coalition with folks who are not in the Democratic Party, right? We're going to have a majority, but we're also going to need Republicans to advocate with their senators to move things past the Senate. It doesn't help us to only have a majority in the House and not actually move legislation beyond that. And there's a couple things. One, societal pressure works, right? That's how the Epstein File Act eventually got to Donald Trump and he had to sign it. And so societal pressure and working across the aisle to ensure that the message is clear of who we're fighting for and what we're fighting for. The other thing is, I think it's really important for us to remember that Republicans see the writing on the wall and they're going to have to negotiate with us on a number of things if they're going to get anything done. And so when Democrats hold the cards historically, we've always played really nice. The one time we've really moved the needle, from my perspective, in my adult lifetime, was the Affordable Care Act and moving that forward under President Barack Obama. For those who don't know the lore of it, that's how Congressman Boyd lost his seat. Folks were really upset that he voted for ACA. They thought that as a Blue Dog Democrat, he wouldn't vote for something that progressive. He used his position and his power to do what was right for the American people, and he wagered his own political career for it. And I think that's the kind of leadership that we need again in this district. And so it's building coalition and it's doing the right thing and it's telling people publicly. And in order to tell people, you have to know who you serve, which means you can't be taking corporate donations. You can't be taking billionaire donations. A lot of these folks sit quiet right now because they're not working for us and they don't need to be communicating with us. They need to communicate with their donors. No one sitting at this table tonight is going to be behaving like that, which is good news for the Democratic side of the ticket. And then on the point of social media regulation, it's important that we defend the First Amendment, but it's also important that we protect our kids. I'm 32, for those who didn't guess my age yet, and I had a MySpace. I was a kid when MySpace came out, right? So social media is my generation and younger as far as when it comes in formative years. And I can tell you in general, I don't believe that it's healthy. I can tell you though that I also believe it's largely the role of the parent to censor, and it's also the role of the social media firm to ensure that we have safe places on their websites. And so from my perspective, these guys are making billions on these websites, and they know who's on the other side of that screen. They need to be held accountable for putting inappropriate content in front of those kids. I don't think it should be at the state level because you're going to have a far more impactful outcome if the feds are pushing that sort of regulation. And like what Nick said about committees, how exactly you write that, I do not know. And that's something that we need advisors to do. But similarly with knowing the answer, because I have tech advisors who have told me that they know who's a bot and who's not, there are answers to this. And it's just a matter of getting a Congress that is actually willing to serve the American people. So it's a great question. Who wants to go first? Okay.
So on the first question, I absolutely believe in building coalition, trying to build relationships with other members of Congress. That probably is one of the first things that I would be doing once I get to Congress, is trying to build those relationships, figuring out who would help me get things done, who I need to find as my mentor, all of those types of things. I believe in trying to reach mutually acceptable agreements. I was trained as a mediator. In a perfect world, all agreements should be positive for both sides. I also believe that you have to know when it's time to quit and use different tactics. We're seeing right now that we're at a point where sometimes the other side is not willing to negotiate at all. They're not willing to give any room. And so then you need to switch course. Stop trying to work with them and figure out how you can stop them. Figure out different ways to accomplish what you need to get done. And I think that there has not been enough of that lately, that so often we're seeing people in Congress now who would just say, well, they're not going to cooperate with us. We're not going to be able to get this vote passed. So we're just not going to do anything. And that is a choice. That is not the answer. Do something, even if it is putting forth the legislation anyways, even if it's going to fail, because then at least you're showing that this is important and you're getting the other side on the record. As far as social media regulation, I do believe that, I believe in the First Amendment, but and our children, there do need to be certain protections in place. I find that a lot of our young people actually are very tech savvy, and my kids often can tell when something is a bot or someone or certain things are AI much more quickly than I can. For very, very young kids, we have seen that there are certain platforms like Roblox. I think there was a big scandal where where they knew that there were predators online, and were not doing anything about it. We need to take measures to make sure that predators don't have access to young children, but we need to find regulations where there is a balance between protecting our First Amendment rights and protecting our children, and also making sure that there's not false information out there, especially with the rise of AI. There are so many things out there where we're going to get to a point where we don't even know what's real and what's not. And so trying to figure out a balance there. I don't know how exactly to write that regulation, but that's where I am. Yeah.
I'm glad I opted into my jacket with pockets on it today. I mean, we'd be trading this all around. But yeah, so quickly on there. So basically on the front of the committees and kind of getting things done and how do you work with other people. I think one of those big things is single issue bills. We got to get back to actual bills that solve actual problems, and then you can build a coalition. As soon as we get stuck into the omnibus bills and the big, huge, all packaged up spending bills, well, then it's like, well, if you don't support it, the military shuts down. Well, I guess people just vote on whatever, and then they stuff more and more into it because it has to pass, and it's a snowball, right, that grows. So I'd be very supportive at basically a foundational level. Don't support that, right? I will support single issue bills and not those big pork package bills just in general. I think they're bad, and it's not how Congress is supposed to work. And the only reason they do that is because it's already dysfunctional and they don't want to fix it. So that's the first thing. The other piece is being able to work with people who you don't agree with, right? I'll gladly stand arm in arm with a Republican, with a Trump person, with whoever. If they support my issue on that bill, then get it passed. Even if we don't agree on 99% of other stuff, I don't care. In that moment, we agree on this issue, and that's all that matters. It's not a popularity contest between me and them hanging out. It's making sure that we, as people that live here, get good legislation passed. Get over yourself, right? I hope that we can do that. And then on the issue of basically social media, which I think is a fascinating one that we really need solutions for. And it's hard, as you've heard, we are good at identifying the problems of this stuff, and it's really hard to figure out how to solve it. Well, one of those ways is basically as a product manager, which means I was the guy that dealt between the screen when you clicked on something and then the database guys who had to figure it out. And I would get yelled at by users, and then I'd get yelled at by the engineers who had to build it. And I had to figure out, how do we manage this and how do we figure it out? That was my job, basically, is translating that. Well, one thing I learned in that is if you put something in a settings page, people don't use it, right? They don't go back behind and go into the menus and check on things. So one of those things is social media used to not be so broken. From 2005 to 2016 or so, social media basically showed you your friends. If we were all friends on Facebook or somewhere, right, it would show you if you posted, I'd see it. And if I waited 2 weeks to log in and you hadn't posted, I wouldn't see any of your stuff, right? It was pretty much you saw local people that you knew or organizations you liked, businesses you liked, stuff like that. In 2016, everything changed. It became engagement feed. It became the unlimited scroll, right, where it just never ended. And what that's doing is it's reading the entire internet and then knowing you and building a profile of who are you and who are you and who are you, and how do I get you to stay on that phone 1 minute longer? That's it. That's the whole design. Engagement is not engagement in life. Engagement is engagement on their platform and keeping scrolling. They track how long you scroll. They track how close your finger hovers to the screen. They know where your eyeballs are on it. They know if you type something in. TikTok takes 150 data points a second or a minute off your phone, right? This is not random. They have intentionally built this engagement algorithm in order to divide us, because what is engagement? It's passion. It's people that will stay on. Well, what keeps people on is anger. That's what it learned. It didn't get programmed that way. It just learned that humans respond to anger. We will, if we're angry, you'll keep going. If I said, man, this is a beautiful wooden mahogany table, a bunch of people would share that and be like, that guy's crazy. He's an idiot. This is a plastic table. If I say this is a decent plastic good table, no one's ever going to share it because it's not engaging, right? You're not angry. That's what it promotes, which is why what we've seen is the people who are successful in social media are the ones who are the most anger and the most just right. They are right. They are never wrong. They can't be wrong because that's what engages. Now, how do you fix that? You go back and you just have a very simple law that says you have to do non-engagement algorithmic feed. You just friends of friends and date, time, when did they post it? And then if someone wants to opt in to the engagement algorithm, they can, but they have to click settings, opt in, and do that. As soon as you do that, 90% of people don't. Their feeds go back to normal, and the whole country starts to simmer down a little bit. Now, it takes a while to happen. That's not overnight. And then you can also make it so that for children, you just say, no, they're not allowed to toggle that. Right? And now you don't get into being the speech police. You don't get into having to regulate what Facebook or Twitter can show and what's true and what's not. Those are all important questions, and we need to think about those. But I don't want the government being the thought police of saying what something's true or not. I want to know what people are sharing, and then I'll make that judgment. As soon as we get into the business of deciding what's right and what's not correct, and this is right, we're not going to make it through that, right? So I think this is an elegant way. It's simple and it's solution focused. And can I get a coalition of Republicans and Democrats to support that? Probably, because all our kids are anxious and depressed and scared, and we are too, based on what we're feeling and seeing off those platforms. So that's how I'd fix that one. Thank you.
So, first of all, I wanted to thank you for coming. I think we got 3 great candidates. I certainly hope one of you comes through all the way to Washington. And when you're in the Congress, you really wear 2 hats. So you're looking at stuff that's good for America, and you're looking at stuff that's good for the district. They may overlap at times and probably will, but there are some specific things that are in each category. So I'm interested in what would be your top priority in each category.
Thank you.
This is going to be our last question, but we're going to have a mingle opportunity for you guys to ask questions individually of our candidates, and just to stay here as long as you need to have your needs met. Okay?
Are we going to do a closing statement, or is this our last thing?
You can do a closing statement, but it has to be.
Right, so with this question, then okay, that's
Not every, I noticed that at least at one table and another table, not all the candidates have one of these forms at the table. So maybe before we all leave, make sure that we each sign 3 of these.
Yeah, I think all of our forms are at different
Because
tables.
I would like them all on the ballot.
We would too.
Yes, we would too. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marcia.
So I think the question was, what would we prioritize at a district level, and what would we prioritize at a national level? So at a district level, really, the first thing I would do once I get into Congress really is trying to set up really great constituent services here. That's something that I believe every congressperson should do, no matter what. There's no excuse for not providing excellent constituent services. And Part of that is trying to make it accessible. This is a huge district, so we're already thinking about setting up mobile offices and figuring out how to get into our communities to make sure that people in this district know what services are available. There are a lot of federal programs that a lot of people just don't even know about that already exist. A lot of help that people could be getting that they're not accessing. Helping with helping people figure out how to navigate grants, how to actually access these things. And talking to people so I know what people in this district want. At a federal level, I know I've mentioned it over and over, I believe in accountability. We need to get the corruption and the power and the money out of not just Congress, but out of government, and making sure that we can actually get a government that works for us. And that would be a priority for me.
Constituent services, absolutely. We've been missing out on them, but as far as a specific issue, what we've seen in the last 10 years is hunger increase in this district. We've gone from 1 in 5 families to 1 in 4 experiencing food insecurity. That's unacceptable. And so from an issue perspective, in addition to standing up constituent services, we'll be focused on addressing hunger. I fundamentally believe if you don't have enough food in your belly, it's a lot harder to move on to the rest of the problems in your day. And so we'll be addressing hunger first and foremost. At the national level, very specifically, I don't think we have the votes. We'll have to see how the Senate does, but I don't think we have the votes to actually impeach Donald Trump and remove him from office. Who I do think we could impeach and remove from office very swiftly is Pete Hegseth. And the current as someone who comes from a military family and has active duty folks right now, I'm terrified of him, and so is the military, right? And so people aren't saying it out loud because there is a strong chain of command, and you do not vocalize this, but I know for a fact that the majority of folks would be happy to see him replaced by someone who's actually qualified for the job. And so first and foremost at the national level, I know it sounds niche, but it will have a huge, enormous ripple effect on the safety of our troops and the safety of Americans if we take a Christian nationalist who is unqualified for the job out of it immediately, and we have the votes for that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that no notes. I think that when I look at the national side, it's the accountability piece that really comes up a lot. I look at it as we need to really focus on 2 things. One is the military, and that starts with Pete Hegseth, but also investigations on the generals that have been removed, the staff that have been removed. I've talked to lots of people in the military who behind the scenes will have a whole different face to what's going on here right now, and it's worse than you think, but they can't say anything, right? Because they don't want to do it, and I'm not going to out them, right? We kind of agree to that. It's like on background, they'll tell us stuff, and so I really appreciate that trust. But also, it's a scary moment for the people in the military. And the other piece is DOJ, is just basically if we don't have a good FBI and a good Department of Justice, I don't really care what else Congress wants to do, right? If we want to pass subpoenas and do things, well, the FBI is going to be the one to run those, right? And go take it. And so if we have those corrupted departments and people that aren't in and people that have left and we don't have them replaced, then, good luck fighting your cybercrime if there's no cybercrime division at the FBI. Right, that kind of stuff. So I think the military and the FBI are the 2 big ones on that front. On the domestic side, besides the constituent services, which I agree, sorely just we don't have it here, and people have forgotten what it's like to have a congressional office that actually helps and is responsive and in the community. But I think the other piece here is making sure that we're paying attention to how things connect up outside of the district. And that's stuff like when the water in the Apalachicola is being used and it's hurting the Apalachicola oyster farmers. It's things that are going on in the Gulf and deep oil drilling. Right? These are things that are local but federal in that it's multi-state, which the Congress has a lot more power to do things on. A lot of the things that are very active are here, and Congress isn't going to or doesn't have a lot of power there. But the other side locally is just being in the community. Do you know how much having a strong congressional representative who can go around the community and talk to people, how many mayors we can get elected, how many school board members we get elected, how many Democratic parties we can bring up and regenerate and fund, because we have people actually fighting for us at the national level and trying to bring money and resources back to all of us coming here. That's the kind of stuff that I really want to do locally. So it's constituent services, but before we get all the way into that, we got to get some people elected here so that our communities start getting healed first. So thank you.
Please, please, come and be a part of our effort. And we really need you. We need to flip the seat. On the second Monday at 6 o'clock, right here, every month. And please, and I just want to say one thing, and I think it's important to say while the candidates are here, is that we are part of a grant program called Contest Every Race. And by jumping through a bunch of hoops every month, like having a strategic plan, having a community work event, and a program like that, all of those things, they give us $200 a month for our Gulf County program. And so it's so generous, and they're really lenient about what they ask us to do, but it's been so helpful. But the next thing on the horizon is, it's a community works program, and we are going to be part of a fundraising campaign. And our goal is to fundraise and reach $1,000 to pay off $250,000 in Gulf County citizens' medical debt. And it's super important. And if we can raise $2,500, we can wipe clean the medical debt for citizens in Gulf County. And I think that is amazing. And if we can do it, everybody's a winner. And we'll get you guys all the information so you can be out there helping us with this project. So anyway, show up, show out, be woke. You're amongst people who love you. It's okay. All right? Thank you.